Today, we're going to explore the strategies and mindset needed to achieve success in the business world. And in this episode, we're going to dive into the powerful concept of reinvention and the opportunity it presents for personal and professional growth. We'll also be discussing the importance of positioning yourself as a category of one in order to elevate your status, build credibility, and establish authority in your field, and how to become an icon of influence, leveraging the power of podcasting. That's right. So whether you're just starting out or you're looking to take your business to the next level, you're going to love what my friend Steve has in store for you today. Steve is the founder and editor-in-chief of Podcast Magazine, and he's known as the world's foremost reinvention expert. And he and his wife, Lena, now own and operate a brick and mortar business. One of your targets, one that is providing an amazing service for families, the Bravo Family Mortuary. You're going to hear some of that. That's a part of the reinvention story today. Steve is a veteran who I've looked up to in the internet marketing space for so many years. I'm blessed to now call this man and his wife, Lena, great friends. He is the founder of the well-known event, the New Media Summit. He's the host of #1 rated podcast, the Reinvention Radio, and Beyond 8 Figures. This man is an in-demand media guest who's appeared on CNN, the Huffington Post, the cover of Founder Magazine, countless other media outlets. And today he's going to light you up with knowledge. This man and Lena just went to my birthday party in San Diego, November 19th, where we featured the Red Hot Chili Peppers. That's right. That's a tribute band for Red Hot Chili Peppers, which I was just playing right now. And so I'm super, super excited to have Steve on with me today. This is something that he doesn't even know it, but I've been looking forward to for at least 3 years now. And I'm just honored. I'm so stoked for all of you because the knowledge that you're going to get today and what you're going to be able to do with it, whether you're in the mobile app business, whether you're just getting started, whether you've seasoned and you've been around for 10 years, digital marketing agency, what this man is going to drop on you today is going to light you up. I'm telling you. So with no further ado, Steve, say hello to the Go Mobile community and let's jump into it, man.
Good to see everybody, and good to see you, Dan.
Dude, it's so good to see you, bro. It just seems like yesterday we were sitting there rocking out to our boys in San Diego, huh?
And we stole a bag of chips. So, it's all good.
So funny story to start us off. I love the story. I'm going to share it. I just had a chat with Steve and Lena the other day, and Lena says, Damien, I have to get something off my chest. I'm like, oh, wow. She goes, I really did something. I just got to tell you. Okay, what happened? Well, when we were at your party, we had a couple drinks, we had a good time. And on our way out, we saw a bag of chips there, unopened. It looked great. And we just kind of took it. And I just had to tell you.
It probably had nothing to do with the fact that, perhaps we were also maybe smoking a bit, but, that had nothing to do with anything else there. Just really had to get that bag of chips. So there you go.
It's funny because I told my wife and she spit up her coffee. It was a laughing morning moment for us. It was so amazing. Steve, I'm pumped. We're gonna keep this tight, but as you know, it's super informal, right? So you see, we have some folks. We got Kevin Davis on here, Steve Weber on here, David Thayer. We're gonna have folks that have their cameras on. Some may want to stop us, interrupt us, ask a question. We'll be looking in the chat. But man, let's just make it an organic conversation of fun. I mean, I'm excited to talk about your reinvention story and how it can really apply to everybody here in their lives. So how do you want to do this?
I think probably the best way, since we're just going to keep it pretty informal, is, certainly questions are always good, whether they're from you or from the group here. But why don't you just fire away and we can probably just go from there and build. And I'm sure before we know it, this hour will be over.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's do this. So I'm really inspired by your reinvention story that I'm literally getting to witness in real time right now. You've been the expert of reinvention for many, many years, but what you're going through with your life right now is inspiring. It's intriguing. I have lots of questions. Clearly don't have enough time on this to be able to go through all the questions, but I'd love for you to share that because I think it's so inspiring to just kick off right there.
Yeah, I mean, just a little bit of background. Just give me a yes in the box if this is your first time ever meeting me. Just curious if, and put a no in the box if we've met before in some way, shape, or form. And when I say met, I just mean in terms of something online. Maybe seeing a book or anything that I've done. I'm just kind of getting a sense of who's here. So thanks for the participation on that. Okay, so a lot of folks were meeting for the first time. So good to meet you
Oh, you
guys.
got a lot of yeses there.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Well, the yes means they haven't met me
Oh,
before. The no
gotcha.
means they have. So I kind of switched it up on that. But yeah, appreciate you guys being here. Good to meet some of you for the first time, and for those that I've met before, good to see you again. But yeah, really short, quick background. I've been in the online space for a long time. Matter of fact, did a bunch of things even before the online space. Got involved in the world of music really early. Owned my own nightclub when I was 19, and then got involved in the catalog world. And ultimately, that catalog launched on CompuServe's electronic mall. Just give me a yes in the box if you remember CompuServe. And it seems like we got some OGs in the house here, like myself. So yeah, you got some of you remember CompuServe, right? Yeah, exactly. So I launched a store on CompuServe's electronic mall in 1993. So this is actually my 30th year online.
Wow.
Long time online, and that company became liquor.com, like what you drink. I have to say that for reasons, obvious reasons there. But liquor.com ended up pulling in about 4 million subscribers. We're doing about 48 million uniques to the site, and eventually sold to Berry Dealers IAC. But along the years, a lot of things happened. We had the S1 filed and ready to go public in March of 2000. And if you guys remember March of 2000, that was kind of the beginning of that implosion then. And lost everything, including the liquor.com domain, and company shuttered for the better part of 6 years. So I had to reinvent myself then and get involved in other things, which at the time then was real estate. And ended up developing about 50 odd million in real estate over the years. And then, like some of you, got caught up in the 2007, 08, 09 crash. I ended up giving some of those properties back to the bank, so I had to reinvent myself again, and started going down the road of writing and speaking and podcasting, and trying to share some of my knowledge with those who might want to listen, and eventually started doing live events and coaching, and then ended up launching Podcast Magazine about 3 years ago. So lots of different twists and turns over the years, and now, as Damien said, my wife and I, we opened a brick and mortar business in San Diego. So my wife has been a funeral director and embalmer for the better part of 13 years now, and that was always a dream of hers to have her own place. So we did it. We built a place here in Mission Valley, just kind of close to where the Chargers used to play, and we've got a beautiful 15,000 square foot facility here. And for the first time in a long time, I am in a retail environment, literally dealing with the public in a beautiful way. But doors open, got to be here every day, and it's just an interesting change of pace. So lots of reinvention, and certainly on the professional front, and of course on the personal front as well.
Yeah, and I told you the other day that and I had to ask you and your wife both, because it's really amazing work that you do for families, right? And I wanted to know, like, how do you get up for work every day with the positive mindset when the day before might have been stories? But she made me understand that, they're not all tragic stories. Most are, absolutely. But like, there could be stories where, they're just finally out of suffering mode and things like that. So, how you're able to go home and get even closer together as a result of what you go through, instead of what I would imagine, what I would probably be a mess.
Yeah.
It's really amazing what you guys are doing.
I mean, I appreciate that, and I knew nothing about the industry really coming into it, and so now that I'm a part of the industry, I will say that it was pretty interesting, pretty scary. The first time I saw someone's loved one on the table there, and that took a lot of getting used to. But I think, just like anything else, it's that first little bit that's a shock, the first little bit that's difficult, the first little bit that's challenging. And then you get kind of used to what you're doing, and you get better at what you're doing, and it just becomes just part of your life and what you need to do. So, for us to get over here and help families really is the reason why we do what we do, because there are a lot of corporate owned facilities in San Diego and throughout the world. And look, they have to answer to shareholders, and they are all about the numbers. And so for us to be a family-owned and operated business, and to really be able to serve families in ways that they deserve to be taken care of, and especially in such a challenging and difficult time, and not taken advantage of, it's really special to be able to do this sort of work. And man, I'm doing things I don't even want to describe to you, but I will tell you that you get a real sense of how important every minute of every day is. Let me just simply say that there is a young lady, literally right now, that Lena is working on, 25, went out for a run and got hit by a car and never came back home. So it kind of wakes you up to the importance of just really savoring every minute of every day.
You think that fueled the type of business that you're reinventing into is a big part of what makes this reinvention go around, maybe easier than the past? And then yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I will say that for me, as I'm really trying to even navigate my own next steps. I mean, yes, we have the funeral home, but look, the reality is I'm one of those guys that likes to stay pretty busy, and I need something that I can kind of hang my hat on. And yeah, as I'm looking at the world as it sort of presents all of these new, interesting opportunities, what really remains to be true for me now, especially now with the funeral home, is that there are a lot of opportunities that frankly are centered around the wrong things. And so I think what this reinvention really offers me the opportunity to do is to really get clear on what my values are and how I want to show up in the world and the man that I want to be. And that's a choice that we make every single day in terms of who we want to be in this world, and the man or woman that you want to be. Because ultimately, I'm looking at the crowd here, and I'm 53. Looks like there's some folks that are younger, some folks that are around my age, maybe some folks that are older. And what I'm pretty clear on, and Damien, you can probably appreciate this as well, is that we only get so many trips around the bases, especially as an entrepreneur. It's like I figure everything takes about a 5-year window. I look at things in 5-year windows, and if you really want to build something meaningful, it's about a 5-year window to start to gain any sort of real traction. So obviously you don't want to waste too much time trying to figure out what that next 5-year window is going to be for you, because time is ticking while you're trying to figure it out. But at the same token, you only got so many trips around the bases, right? So you got to be really clear on what you want that next 5-year window to look like.
Yeah, very clear. And I love that what's behind the blocks of 5?
I just mean if you really are an entrepreneur and you're starting something from scratch,
don't give up year 1, like give it some time.
I'm saying it takes about 5 years to really be able to achieve any sort of meaningful critical mass. So critical mass, of course, is going to be a different term for different people. But if you plan on exiting a business, it's really hard. There are examples of this, but it's really hard to build something that's saleable in less than 5 years, right? If you want to build something that provides decent cash flow, it's hard to do that in less than 5 years. Now, I'm not saying there aren't exceptions to the rule. There are outliers. But really, if you're going to devote your time to something and you really want to create something that's meaningful and that puts fire in your soul and puts money in the bank, you're probably looking at about a 5-year block of time to get to that critical mass, if you will.
Got it. If someone's on this session with us right now and they're reinventing themselves into maybe from corporate America for, they were just about to retire, or maybe they've retired and now they're just reinventing themselves in the digital marketing agency world. Irrelevant what they're doing, what advice, right? Because reinvention, sometimes you have to start from scratch. What advice would you give folks that are reinventing right now?
Yeah. So number one, I'd really say you got to just try to understand how you're naturally wired to excel, right? And really try to understand where it is that when you are given the opportunity to invest your time, where is that opportunity for you that just truly lights you up? right? It's because, you know, when you have certain conversations about certain subjects, and you can talk about certain things till the cows come home and other things you've got no interest in talking about. So I would just say really start paying attention to what those topics are that you really feel fired up to talk about, right? Because like Tony Robbins says, success leaves clues, right? And so when you're in a position of trying to figure out what's next, start to look at really where you are investing your time. What conversations are you into? What music are you listening to? What, you know, what books are you reading? What shows are you watching? Just really give meaningful consideration to it. And I like the channel approach in terms of cable or in terms of Netflix or whatever, because when you look at all of the different, I mean, there's just thousands and thousands and thousands of options now, as far as, especially as far as entertainment is concerned. Like I say, start there, because ultimately there is a thread, a common thread that ties so much of where your mind goes together. And if you start looking at it and really examining the pieces, you'll start to see that there are just certain things that absolutely get you fired up more so than others. So start paying attention to what those things are, because if you can do something that ultimately doesn't feel like work, you're going to feel a lot more fired up to do that on the daily than doing something that really feels like it just drags out the day for you.
Yeah, do me a favor in the chat. Tell me, are you reinventing yourself right now? Identify who you are. Where, you know, this path with the Go Mobile community is a reinvention. Would really like to know, personally, would like to know that.
Yeah.
So,
And let me follow that up also with, you know, think about it
Man,
in
I'll
terms
plug
of
this
what do people ask you about on a consistent basis? Because that's an important piece of the puzzle to really give consideration to. If you're stuck and just trying to figure out, like, you know, what is it that I should be doing next? Not only think about it in terms of where you focus your time and energy and the things that really, you know, just that fuel you, but also what is it that other people are asking you about? Because if people are coming to you consistently around certain things, they're basically telling you who you are. And the thing about reinvention for so many of us is we don't know who we are. We don't know how we're naturally wired to excel. We don't know what we're good at. And frankly, I call bullshit on that. You know, we do know. We just may be in denial about what that is. And so if you're in denial about what that is, start asking people around you, and they'll be honest with you, and they'll tell you if you ask them for candid advice.
you know, I know a lot of people want to get to the podcasting topic, but before we get there, I want to get a little raw, if it's okay. You know, I want to understand how discovering a 12-year addiction has led to the most challenging year of your life. If you know, whatever you're willing to share on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm willing to share. I'm kind of an open book as much as I can be. A former friend and mentor of mine who passed a few years ago used to talk about how you can share things that are personal, but don't necessarily have to be private, right? So I'm happy to share what's personal about this, as opposed to, you know, the specific private details. But when you talk about reinvention, you know, I mean, I'm in the thick of it as we speak. The professional stuff will happen, but I got to take care of my own personal shit first. And so in March of 2022, so just last year, going on a year now, I discovered, and really I know this is going to sound strange, but unbeknownst to me, that I had been really a full-blown sex addict for about 12 years, 10 to 12 years, something like that. And I will tell you that from an operational, from my computer guys, you know, from an OS standpoint, when something else is driving the programming and you don't even realize that there is someone else at the wheel, it's a pretty interesting trek when you think you're in control of your life, when in fact you're really just a passenger in the vehicle you're supposed to be driving. So it was a huge shock to me, really, and a discovery that frankly I and as sad and scary as it may sound, I'm not shirking personal responsibility here, but I just didn't realize the extent to which this addiction was running my life. And now that I'm clear on it, I'm really putting the pieces of the puzzle back together. I mean, for myself, in terms of self-esteem, in terms of the guilt and the shame, in terms of just recognizing the amount of wasted time, just the hours upon hours, and just so much of my life had been consumed by this addiction, and didn't even realize that this was going on. I mean, it was a pretty interesting couple of months after I became clear that this addiction existed. And as I started looking back on things, I can see why I've struggled in many ways over the past 10, 12 years. Because no matter how, it's almost like if you've got two magnets, and the polarization is opposite on these magnets, and no matter what you do, you try to push those magnets together and they just won't go together. It's like you're so close, and on the surface, it seems like you've got it all together, but there's still that, that space there between it, and just, you can't get it together until you flip it over, and then it clicks, right? And that's the battle that I had been facing for the last 10 or 12 years, is just trying to push something together that no matter what I did, it wouldn't, and I didn't understand why. So now, with that understanding, and with a much clearer head, and rebuilding my self-esteem, rebuilding my trust, rebuilding my confidence, and just gaining control of my life in ways that I haven't known for an extended period of time. It's such an awakening in so many ways, that not only, of course, affect me on a personal level, but I've already begun to see and reap the benefits on a professional level as well.
Well, congratulations. Congratulations on discovery, and more importantly, congratulations on taking massive action to the solution. So
yeah,
that's really inspiring, Steve.
I appreciate that, man. And I'll tell you, like, there was, and so many of us have addictions, and addictions we recognize, and addictions that we don't. But I will tell you that the willingness to stand in the fire and face your demons, and have your battles, and not run, and not be willing to give in, and not be willing to give up, like the life lessons of standing in the fire of addiction, man, does that translate across the board, and in so many ways, because so many of us aren't willing to stand in the fire, whether it's with someone that we love, and we're not willing to hear what they have to say, whether it's with a professional decision and doing something that we know we need to do, but we're not strong enough to do it, with a friend, with a loved one, I mean, you name it, across the board, just learning how to stand in the fire. Man, that is a skill I wish would be taught in school, because so few of us know how to do it, and me included.
Right, and it's affected most everyone's life. I mean, I know it's affected my life, just various different ways. We have 7 kids and 6 grandkids, and so as the team gets bigger, there's always stuff that we've got to face. We watch our sons go through things routinely.
Yeah, Ed,
right?
Ed in the chat. Yeah, Ed in the chat saying he's 23 months sober now. And,
congratulations, Ed.
Yeah, congrats on that. And I'll tell you. And I would just simply ask you to look at, and not everyone's going to have anything. And for you, the answer might be nothing. But I will tell you that, the more real you can get with yourself, and ultimately the more real you can get with others, man, just the world that opens up for you when you get real is uncanny.
Pretty amazing, huh?
Yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead and now we're going to flip the script a little bit, Steve. We're going to flip the script because, it's all the rage right now besides ChatGPT. It's like, influencer world. And so I'd love for you to teach our folks today, what goes into becoming an icon of influence, leveraging the power of podcasting.
And congrats, Alana, on 37 years drug and alcohol free. That's,
okay. So pull this up here.
Yeah, just pulling on the chat there. Look, becoming an icon of influence is really one of those things where, at the end of the day, basically that identification, that placement, if you will, in the marketplace, it does the work for you, right? Because what ends up happening is, when you're willing to take a stand, and you're willing to really say, this is where I'm hanging my hat. Like even for you guys and the work that you do, I mean, like you could serve pretty much anyone. But at the end of the day, if you're willing to take those talents and serve a particular industry, it just makes that industry stand up and take notice and really say, hey, if you need this, this is your guy, this is your gal, right? And so many of us, what I have found is just that we're unwilling to just kind of plant our flag and just say, this is the space that we're going to own. This is how we're going to be known, right? And so in order to be known, you have to be, it's like you have to be willing to own whatever that particular little piece of the landscape is for you, no matter how big or how small. And so for me, I mean, it was really about 6 years ago or so that I decided that I wanted to really I started podcasting back in 2009, but it was about 6-7 years ago, about 2016, 17, and that was about 2015 actually. Wow, so 8 years ago, that I really decided to say, you know what, this is a niche where I really feel like not only is there a tremendous amount of opportunity in terms of the growth of the industry, but I also felt like there was a tremendous amount of opportunity for me to stand apart from so many others who were in this sort of personal brand type world. And there were a few people out there doing some things, but no one really was dominating this particular niche. And so really when I decided to go all in and say, we're going to, as a team, we're going to make podcasting our focus. Ultimately, once that declaration was made and we started doing things to support that declaration, then ultimately the sort of the rest of the world fell into place in terms of saying, hey, if you need to do something in the podcast world, go see Steve and go see his team. The world then begins to basically support you and bring those opportunities to you. But a lot of people just aren't willing to plant that flag.
Now, is this basically what we call creating the category of one, the ultimate strategy for elevating the status that you talk about?
Yeah.
It's when you finally, plant the flag, the category of one, because if that's the case, Steve, I can relate. Go Mobile Solutions started 13 years ago. And many of folks that are on here have been with me all that time. And what they will probably agree with me on is that for 10 years, for 10 of the 13 years, we were trying to serve the digital marketing agency as a whole. So we created a Facebook course, we created a reputation marketing course, an SMS course, and a social media course, and an XYZ course. And that was what we did. And it was the wake-up call of the pandemic that just gut checked everybody, myself included, my community included, which is the start of this whole series of what you and I are doing right now. But it really told Go Mobile that if you really want to be the one known, the leader, as we've always put ourselves to be out there in the mobile application space, the way we do it, then you need to plant your flag. And that's what we've done. I mean, we have dove down deep over the last 3 years, and it's now netting some really good results. And where those results are coming from, the results of our community. And that's what's amazing. The more focus we put in our flag, the more success stories come about. It's amazing how that happens. So I can relate.
Yeah, and I will say that there is sort of the step one of just really going all in on a particular niche. That of course makes sense. But to create a category of one, you really have to be willing to do something that no one else is willing to do. So, and let me give you an example. So when we decided to go down the road of podcasting and really focusing on that, doing whatever we could to make a name for ourselves in that particular niche, that was really step one. But to establish ourselves as that really category leader, category king, create that category of one, we needed to go farther than just declaring podcasting as that specific area of focus. So it started with the New Media Summit and creating an event where we gave people like yourselves the opportunity to take center stage and pitch top podcasters on who you are and what you do, and literally get booked on the spot. And so that event was awesome, and it really helped to establish our credibility and authority and expertise and so on, in pretty meaningful ways. But the idea of doing, an event, albeit it had a little bit of a nice spin to it because we focused on the podcast guesting side of the equation, that still didn't really help us to create a category of one. It led us in the right direction, and you need those steps in order to get to your final destination for sure. But ultimately, launching Podcast Magazine is what helped us to create that category of one, because anyone else can create an event and try to match podcasters with podcast guests, and other people have been doing it. But there's really only going to be one Podcast Magazine. There's only going to be one Rolling Stone. Even if you look at the other worlds, Sports Illustrated and so on, you had some other publications, but really only one Sports Illustrated, right? So it's just really owning and claiming and dominating that niche, and ultimately saying, look, Paris Hilton, Katie Couric, Jordan Belfort, like all of these people that we then ended up sitting down with for cover features and whatnot, and putting them, like, there was no reason for them to sit down with us other than the fact that we created Podcast Magazine. So the point being, there are still, a lot of podcasts, 3-4 million podcasts, right? Whatever that actual number is. There's only one Podcast Magazine. That's a category of one.
Congratulations on that, by the way. I've always anyway, you're right. There is no other podcast magazine. There has never been, there wasn't one before. And who would want to do it now? You have it. That's
Yeah. So that takes a lot of creative thinking, but it also takes a lot of action, right? And just getting into motion. And the answers are often found simply by taking wrong action. Even though, it might be considered wrong, you didn't get the results you wanted, that wrong action ultimately will move you much closer to whatever it is that you were, meant and made to really create and bring forth. But whatever that action is that needs to be taken today that you've been sitting on, I would say take that action, because it will lead you towards whatever that next step is.
So while you dove into podcasting and your whole team dove into podcasting, obviously you were teaching people how to be better podcasters, how to get guests on their show. Were you teaching them how to get a certain frequency of guests on their show, whether it's one a week, one a month? What did you recommend? What did you learn was the best practice for podcast guesting?
Well, on the guesting side, and there was a period of time where I was a guest on over 500 shows in less than in a 3-year period of time. So, I will say that from a podcast guesting standpoint, if you could do one interview a day, by all means do it, because the reality is even the smallest of shows typically get 1,000 or so downloads per episode. Those are small shows. Some shows, of course, get a lot less, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying even the smaller shows get some pretty decent listenership. And so what ends up happening when you are a guest on other people's shows is that you really begin to hone your message. And I think what most people miss about why you want to be a guest on podcasts is not necessarily to drive leads. Yes, you can drive leads. It's not necessarily to drive sales. Yes, you can drive sales. But at the end of the day, the more you talk about what you do, the better you get about talking about what it is that you do. And you'd be amazed at what happens when you just start answering questions. You begin thinking differently about your own business. You create your own copy. Just get the transcript of those interviews, and you've got your sales page, you've got your newsletter, you've got your emails for the next 2 months, right? Whatever it is, you talk for an hour, you've got a month's worth of content, right? So people underestimate the power of just talking about their life and their business and what it is that they do, because then you get the sound bites. Then you start to be like, oh man, yeah, what I just said, I do that shit all the time. Like, damn, well, that was good. Let me write that down. I'll just say stuff that flows out of me. I'm like, oh shit, I got to write that one down. So, but that's because you're actually in conversation. You're talking to people, and people will ask you questions. And you get a book, right, Jay? Exactly. You get a book. So you'd be amazed at what happens based on just simply being a guest on shows. So if it were me, I would suggest that you're on a show at least once a week. Try to go for once a day, because it's not about the number of people that are listening. You just never know who is listening, right? I mean, there's 53 people on live right now. I'm not sure how many people will watch the recording. I don't know all of you personally. I'm not going to make any assumptions about the people that are on. For all I know, there's a 7-figure deal right now with one of these fine folks that are on the call. And I would have never, ever, ever, had this opportunity if I just simply looked at it and Damien said, hey, there's going to be 50 people on, blah, blah, blah. If I'm one of those sort of high-headed, arrogant people, I might be like, yeah, it's not worth my time, man. Right. So I say, you want to say yes to every opportunity. Anytime you have an opportunity to talk about what you're doing, take advantage of that opportunity if somebody wants to hear from you.
Love that. Love that. Now to flip it, if you have a podcast, and what strategies would you share on getting guests on
Well,
your
let me
podcast?
back up for 2 seconds though, because let me help you find some shows. And
Here
let's
you
circle back to being a host. So just a few quick things to think about in terms of finding some great shows to be a guest on. Number one, go to Google and just simply figure out, well, let me back up for 2 seconds. You got to have clarity on what your topic of influence is, your TOI. Your topic of influence is the 1 or 2 words that you would use to describe your area of expertise, your category of one, what it is that you focus on. So for me, if I'm going to try to nail down what my topic of influence is, maybe I'm going to use the word reinvention. So if we're going to go down that road, I mean, I do a lot of different things, but if we're going to go down that road, and I want people to read my book, What Is Your What? I'm going to go on shows about reinvention. So if I simply boil down what it is that I focus on and what really puts fire in my soul down to 1 or 2 words, like reinvention or golf or cemeteries, funeral. I mean, who knows, whatever it is, but whatever that area of focus is, your topic of influence, something you can talk about till the cows come home till you're blue in the face. Write down that 1 word, write down those 2 words, because ultimately your topic of influence becomes the search term that you use to find relevant shows. So once you have those 1 or 2 words, now you go to Google and you just type it in like reinvention podcast and see what comes up, because the shows that are already talking about reinvention are going to come up. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, why would I want to go on to a show if they've already talked about reinvention? Aren't they looking for new guests, new topics, this, that, and the other? Well, the answer is, well, number one, it's true. They might not want to necessarily talk about that particular topic again tomorrow, but at least it's a topic that is of interest to them because they talked about it. So now it's just a matter of a pitch and a spin, and how do you simply get their attention to say, hey, if you're going to be talking about this subject again, here are some things that I bring to the table. But I'm always a fan of going after the shows that are already talking about your area of expertise and what it is that you feel you can bring to the table in terms of value. So
Because then your market, it's a market match in that case.
it's a market match. Exactly. So go to Google, type in the topic of influence with the word podcast and see what shows come up. Start there. You can go to Apple Podcasts and you can do the same thing in their search box. You can go to Spotify, you can do the same thing in their search box. Start looking for those shows that are a market match for your topic of influence. And then actually go and listen to the shows, right? Find the shows that come up. Take a listen to those shows. And you got to make sure, number one, do those shows have guests, right? Because you're not going to pitch shows where they don't have guests. If somebody's just doing a soapbox episode, week in and week out, that's not going to be a good fit for you. So listen to the show, make sure they have guests. Number 3, make sure that you actually like the show. It could be some dickhead who, who's talking about this, that, and the other, and you don't resonate with it,
But
right?
then why did you come on my show today?
Why'd you come on my show, right? So listen to the show, make sure you like them. And then at the last step there, step 4 is you gotta pitch them, right? And every one of you should have a media one sheet. every single one of you should have a media one sheet. It's just a very simple one pager that talks about who you are, what you bring to the table, why they should have you as a guest on their show. If you've been on other shows before, you list the shows that you've been on. So, it just kind of proves it out for them. And what are the topics that you cover? And every one of you should have a media one sheet, and every one of you should be pitching shows to get on every single week. So, so just that in and of itself will help you immensely to get booked on shows for sure.
Yeah, and you're right. Practice. The more shots on goal you have, the better you're going to get at it. And not only that, what Kevin Davis shared last week was you take one of those podcasts and you can chop it up 30 to 100 different ways now using tools like ChatGPT and AI. And so you can't go wrong producing content. And and like you said, just make sure you like the show. Make sure you're going to talk about something that you know how to talk about. That's amazing. So now flip it and let's talk about how we get people on our show.
As well, I mean, if you're looking for guests for your show, the easiest way to get guests onto your show that you want to have on your show is to, number one, you got to do your homework, right? In terms of who those guests are, because so many people want to have the same, kind of usual suspects as guests on their shows that, reality is, sure, it might appeal to a select few, but you really got to do your work in terms of finding people that the world hasn't heard from a million times. And that's one of the things that I like the most about the New Media Summit was we provided a platform for people that the world hasn't heard from a million times. And oftentimes those are the people who have so much more to offer than those who just regurgitate the same shit every single time they're on, they're on somebody's show. So really start to figure out, who are some of the people, and you can flip it the other way, right? So if you're looking to be, let's say Reinvention is your topic of influence, and you type in Reinvention podcast into Google to try to find podcasts that are talking about that particular subject, okay? Flip it the other way and say Reinvention expert. So you take your topic of influence, and now you throw the word expert or authority or author or speaker or one of the, whatever those things are for you. And you throw that into Google and you start looking for people who actually have notoriety in that space. And in the same way, you would do it in terms of listening to the shows that you want to be a guest on. Start looking at what is it that this person is doing out in the world? What's their book? Not saying you got to read every book, but do they have a book? Did they do a TED Talk? Maybe they have some YouTube videos out or whatever it is, and start finding some of those people that you think actually are pretty cool and you want to have on as a guest. But that's a huge mistake that I see a lot of podcast hosts make, is they'll get pitched. Someone will say, hey, you should, have this person on as a guest. They'll look them up. Maybe they'll listen or they won't listen, but they just end up having people on that they don't really gel with. Like you gotta make sure that you find people that you could actually have a meaningful hour-long conversation with, or 45-minute conversation with, somebody that you like, somebody that you dig on, and somebody that you want to go to a bar with and just hang out and grab a beer with or whatever, right? Because those are the best conversations, are the ones where it's someone that the host, you can tell there's chemistry. The host actually digs on the guest, and it's like there's actual chemistry there. So
where there's stories where the guest actually snags a bag of chips from the host. I mean, that's the true connection.
Yes, exactly. So that's that's a big part of it, is just reverse it, flip it, find the people that are talking about your topic of influence, that are doing interesting things, and vet them. And even I would always recommend that you talk to your potential guest for at least 15 minutes. Set up one of those Calendly 15-minute links or whatever, and just have a 15-minute session with them before you invite them on. Because so many people just get on with their guests and they haven't even had a conversation with them yet. And so I will tell you, there have been quite a few people that I have done that with, that, not knocking them or anything of that nature, but I just didn't see the value for my audience, right? Because ultimately, if you have your own show, your audience is trusting you
Mhm.
to find the right guest who's going to make their time worthwhile for investing a 30-minute or 45-minute or an hour of their time, right, to tune in. So you got to really be beholden to your audience and really serve them at the highest level.
Love that. Love that. And I try to do that all the time as we curate, our guests. So I can totally relate. And so that was the part that you talk about, the podcast domination system. I had a note down here. Is there a system to doing that, or you just what you just described? I mean, that is essentially, find the people you like, find the people, get to know who they are, do your research. Just to summarize here, have a conversation with them, make sure you gel, make sure they gel with your audience, right?
Yeah.
Make sure that your audience is a match. These are all very key points.
Yeah.
How long do you think podcast should be? Podcast, audio only.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the mindset that just kind of the Rogan mindset that a podcast should be as long as it needs to be.
Okay.
And, frankly, there are hour-long episodes that could have been 10 minutes. And, there's 30-minute episodes that should have been a couple hours, right? So, yeah, whatever those, I don't like putting a time limit on it. I mean, I would say that on average, you probably don't want to do less than a half hour. But some of the best episodes that I've listened to are episodes of 7, 8, 9 minutes where it's just a really poignant, especially if it's a soapbox episode and you have expertise, in a particular arena, you could get on and make a really good point and make a really good case for something in under 10 minutes all day long.
Excellent. Yeah, I need to learn that. I need to do more of that.
The other thing that I would look at in this podcast domination ranking system that we're talking about, and I look at this from the standpoint of being a guest on somebody's shows, is nowadays there's two more things that I'll do. Number one, I will go on to Apple and I will look and see how many ratings and reviews they have. Again, I'm all for the underdog. I'm all for trying to help people out. But at this point of time, with just all the different things that I'm into and things I've got going on with the family and my own personal recovery and health and so on, I'm very particular about what I do with my time. So if I go on and I get an invitation, and I should say I really say no to everybody at this point, but Damien's a friend who I'm happy to do this for. But at the time when I wasn't saying no to everything, one of the main things I would do is I would go to Apple and I would look and see how many ratings and reviews they had. Because, if the show's got 12 ratings and reviews, nothing against them. You do what you got to do, but I'm looking to invest an hour of my time with a show that's got a little more traction. So you have to figure out what your threshold is on that. And also what the rating is. I mean, if it's a 4-star rating, that may not be where you set the bar. You may need them to be 4.8, 4.9, or 5.0, right? Depending on your own personal preference. So you got to figure out what that bar is. And the other thing is I do look at the charts, and if they're not in the charts for their respective category, I'm probably not doing the show. And again, there's millions of shows and a lot of shows that won't make it to the charts. And I'm not trying to be harsh because I know, some of you have podcasts that don't make it to the charts. But we've all got, whatever our thresholds are for why we do what we do. And for me, especially during the last couple of years when I had been doing interviews, it just, if it wasn't ranking, it just wasn't a show I was going to do.
So I've got to ask you a question. I want some feedback. How am I as a host so far?
Oh, you're shitty, dude. You keep walking out of the room, like you keep leaving. Like, I don't know if you're scratching your ass or what's going on over there, but no, dude, I mean, like, terrible.
It's a lighting issue, but yeah.
Uh-huh.
No, but thank you. I love the feedback because I want to get better too, but
No, I'm just kidding with you. You're all good, Damien.
No, I know, but seriously, like, what would you recommend? I can definitely take it. And what would you recommend to folks that are going to do it? Stay attentive, like don't get up and walk away, and make sure your lighting's done in advance, right? I mean,
yeah, all those things. And also, frankly, but this is a video thing. It's not technically a podcast.
Right.
I can't imagine being a host of a show today without having a decent microphone and headphones. Like, you just have to do it that way. And unless it's somebody who's just like, you catch Gary Vee for 10 minutes on the road, it's like a once in a lifetime thing, and he's from his phone. Just nobody should be on their phone. Nobody should be without a decent mic and headphones as a guest. And you just got to insist on it. It's like, you got to lay out the parameters. So you want to be on Rogan, you're going to the fucking Rogan studio. Like, you're not phoning it in. So, you want to be on my show, this is what you got to do. So you just figure out what that is, for you. But yeah, as a host, you really got to have just a decent USB mic. Doesn't have to be anything crazy like a Blue or something like that. Audio Technica, there's some decent mics out there that aren't crazy money, and headphones for sure.
Thank you, Jay. You're sweet. Appreciate that.
Damien is a great host and illustrates it's all about the audience more than him. He really embodies it. If it doesn't add value to any of it, not worth doing. Yeah, see, that's what you need. That's 1,000 true fans right there. See, you just need 1,000 J's and you're good.
So I've got to ask you a question that I've just been dying to hear the answer to. What is the best advice you've ever received? The key word being ever received.
There's a lot of really, really good bits of advice. And I was actually weighing this when you sent me the questions. But I'm gonna give myself a pat on the back here and say it's a little thing I came up with for my clients about 7-8 years ago, which is to stop stepping over dollars to get to dimes. And just so many folks are caught up in dime related activities, and you're just stepping over those dollars to get to them. And look, like I said, we only have so many of these 5-year windows. And the question is, as you look at your own 5-year windows, what's going to provide the best ROI, the highest ROI for you? And you have to define what that means. Because if you don't want to have any more of the grind and you want to have more freedom, well, freedom comes with having cash in the bank, right? So that 5-year window has to produce the most capital and most cash possible. Maybe for you, your ultimate currency is being able to spend time with your family. So in that 5-year window, you have to design something that allows you to spend that time with your kids or with your wife or husband or whoever it is, right? So it's gonna vary from person to person in terms of what the dime is and what the dollar is. But I know from experience that most entrepreneurs are stepping over dollars to get to dimes.
Great advice. What would be a book that you would recommend to this audience and why?
Yeah, I'm not an avid reader, but I will say that for the entrepreneurs
Or a podcast, right?
Or for the podcast world, yeah. I'm really, especially now, and it's funny because I just reread this book. Now that we're back in brick and mortar, but I had an opportunity to interview J. Conrad Levinson in one of his last interviews, actually before he passed, and this is back in 2012. And so, if you haven't ever read Guerrilla Marketing, there's a lot of tried and true stuff in there. And again, like I said, I've been rereading it now that we've got this. Some of it's outdated, of course. But there's a lot of really brilliant thought that went into that book. And from a marketing perspective, especially as you guys are on a local basis or, trying to do things, just to get more customers in. So much of what J. Conrad Levinson taught in guerrilla marketing is applicable to this day.
I find that when I revisit books 10 years later, like Think and Grow Rich, when I read when I'm 20 and then I read when I'm 40, they're two completely different books. I really find that revisiting books every decade is kind of mind-boggling how different the book is just because of your state of mind and where you are in your journey.
For sure.
So, yeah, that's a really good book, Guerrilla Marketing. And what about a tool, a resource, a hack, an app, anything that you'd recommend? Something fun, something cool, whatever.
Yeah, right. Man, that is a really good question. But I at this point in time, I am all about mental health and just really trying to get a decent head back up on my shoulders. And so the hack that I would recommend, a little different than what others perhaps might recommend in this arena. But I will tell you that cold, and I mean catch your breath cold showers every morning, like, cold will set you up for success during the day, unlike anything you've ever done. Because what it really does, there's nothing ever fun about it. And I mean, I'm talking like, all cold, no hot, nothing coming into that pipe. It's
All the way right.
All the way right. Like I'm talking like, 40 degrees type cold, like hurt your hands, hurt your skin type cold. It really, number one, it sets you up to, as Rogan would call it, to really tame that inner bitch, because you start out the day just really taming that inner bitch and just saying, I know the voice is there, everything in your heart, in your head, and your heart is saying, don't get in, there's nothing redeeming about this. And it's hard, right? It's hard. And that's the thing, man, is so few of us do things that are hard. And I will tell you, as I'm working on my next book here, which is called Achieving Quintessence. Quintessence is like the ultimate form, or sort of ultimate iteration of a thing, whatever that thing might be. Part of that process is really about challenging yourself, and each of us needs to challenge ourselves on both a personal and a professional level every single day. And it is a personal challenge to start out the day. Now, it's not as much of a challenge as it used to be, but it's still a challenge to turn on that cold and to put your hand under it and willingly step under that, that stream of freezing cold water. But from a neurotransmitter standpoint, I mean, it fires off so many benefits. From a physiological standpoint and from an emotional standpoint. I will tell you that it's life-changing.
How long in that shower?
I'll stay there and I will make it warm, but I'll get through, and I got longer hair, but I will get through the initial rinse and my head completely under and shampooing. Leaving it on, soaping, and then rinsing off the shampoo before I turn the warm on. So Wim Hof for sure does some really interesting stuff.
That's like a 10-minute at least.
But it's more like about 4 to 5 minutes before I turn on any of the warm.
Okay, awesome. All right, great hack. I'm going to try it tomorrow.
Dude, I'm telling you, I'm on day. I've made a commitment to do it every day this year, so I'm on day 20 today, right? 20, yeah, day 20. So I'm gonna do it 365.
The only months that I can do it here in Cabo, I certainly cannot do it in July, August, or September because the pipes are too hot. The water just, I can't get it cold.
Yeah. So then you might want to consider. Somebody popped in Wim Hof. I mean, those ice baths, those coolers, they're life-changing, man. I will tell you, I did my first ice bath less than a year ago. And I swear, I moved from Chicago because I hated the cold. Now, I'm not going back to Chicago anytime soon. Don't get me wrong, I'm in San Diego. But my relationship to the cold changed when I got in that ice bath. It was pretty incredible. I like it, and I mean, you say you can't change, bullshit. Like you can change your life literally in an instant. And it did change my relationship to the cold with the ice bath. You could easily do that.
Yeah, anytime you want Chicago, you just jump in the shower for 4 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, Steve, out of respect for your time, I'm going to land the plane, but I want to ask if there's one question from someone that's just been dying to get a question out since we didn't do any questions. If there's one, the first person that puts a question for Steve, we're going to address it live. Then we'll let Steve say some final words. We'll wrap it up today. What's your question? David Thayer, Steve, why not add video and more into video podcasting? What do you mean?
Yeah. Well, Dave cheated a little bit because he had it in before. He knew the question opportunity was coming. So he popped it at 4:58. You asked it at 4:59. Just timestamp on that, just to be clear. but I'm happy to answer that. So, there definitely is a lot to be said for video podcasting. I mean, Rogan, he really built his show as a video podcast initially. There just happens to be an audio version on it, but Rogan is video first, and I think you're making a huge mistake if you're in the world of podcasting not to do it as video, because then you can take snippets and do it on TikTok and on Instagram and across the board. But yeah, I will tell you that that video, man, it's this, Damien. I mean, it's all about mobile. It's all about video, and you'd be making a huge mistake if you were starting a show now not to do it.
Yeah, and just so you know, David, I mean, our team takes these and puts them on Anchor and makes the audio form of them. And maybe there's some edits required that don't exist in the video set, but all right. Well, thank you so much. Lucky you there, David. You got a good question, but that was a great question to end the show. What are your final words to the Go Mobile community? And thank you, by the way, but I'll give you my thank you before you get off. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. I mean, you're welcome. I appreciate the opportunity. Like I said, it's good to meet so many of you that I haven't met before, and good to see some folks that I have. Yeah, I mean, I guess the main takeaway is just really think about the the 5-year window, because I think if nothing else lands for you, just really give consideration to that, especially those who are a little bit older like I am, because what do we got? 2, 3, 4 of those decent 5-year windows left before the energy just isn't where we need it to be. And that's just the harsh reality. So just be really aware, and be really, for your younger folks, same thing though, be really aware, because a good 5-year window now can set you up for life. And you fucking dig in and you do your shit now, that 5-year window literally can mean that you don't have to worry about any of those 5-year windows in your 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond. So dig in now,
Steve, that's very, very good message to end on. I thank you so much. I'm honored. You said that right now, where you and Lena are really focused in this really magical work that you're doing for folks, you don't do a lot of this stuff. And so I'm absolutely honored that, and you, the way you told me, it's like, dude, we're friends. Of course, I'll do that. And it just meant the world to me. I just want to thank you so much. And thank Lena for letting me pull you away for a minute too.
No worries. She is asking me to come downstairs now because we got to put this girl in her clothes. So
We are done.
We'll be getting her ready for her family to visit her tomorrow.
Okay, everybody, unmute. Tell Steve how much you loved him and how much it was a great show. Go.
I love this, Steve.
Great show,
Thanks so much.
Steve. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Steve. God bless you.
Love you, Steve.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you.
Steve.
All
Love
right,
you, brother.
Damon, say hey to Nikki.
All right, we'll do. All right, guys, that was fire. That was absolute fire. This is where relation capital pays off for you, where I'm able to tap into our friends and deliver them to you. Those are some really good messages today. The 5-year blocks, very good messages today. I'm going to listen to this one about 2 or 3 times. So thank you, guys. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Next week on tap, Omar Periu, my Cuban brother from another mother down in Boca Raton, the author of Investigative Selling. So make sure to tune in live if you've been looking for the right way to sell digital marketing services or mobile applications. Hope you enjoyed this today. Hope you enjoyed Steve's message. Remember, life is short. So take the messages we learned today very serious, because I think it would be very rewarding for you and your family. Okay. Love you guys. Thank you. Go mobile or go home.
Go home.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.